So, namaskar and welcome once again, friends. As I said in the last class, we talked about Midnight's Children. Now we are going to talk about the Moor's Last Sigh. This is again a very important novel by Salman Rushdie. This was the fifth novel of Salman Rushdie, which got published in 1995, and the title of the novel is taken from the history of Boabdil, the last Moorish king of Granada. And there is a reason behind that, because, like the last Moorish king, of Granada, our narrator also faces exile and reflects on his uh, disintegrating life. So, set in Indian cities like Bombay and Cochin, and then taking the narrator to Spain, to a deserted palace in Spain, the story moves from one place to another. The novel depicts several historical figures and events, as well as we have seen how Salman Rushdie mixes history with the personal. So, in the last novel, also, we found how the personal history of Sinai family is clubbed with the historical events that are taking place outside. So, here again, we find he interviews all the events and historical figures at that point in time. So, he talks about surrender of Grenada, the demolition of the Babri Masjid in 1992, the 1993 Bombay bombings, the gangster and terrorist Dawood Ibrahim, as well as modern Indian political entities like Baba Bal Sahab Thackeray and the rise of the political party Shiv Sena. So the novel basically spans over 600 years of history and tells us the story of four generations in the life of a Bombay family, and through that it traces the rich cultural lineage and history of India, and also reflects on the current conditions, the current society as such. The Moor's Last Sigh is a novel in which ancient history, modern life, fantasy, tragedy, and satire form overlapping layers of multiple meanings. So it reflects the European struck in home away from home kind of condition in the colonies, which manifest their longing for their original homeland. So it abounds in the same kind of diasporic experience of homelessness. It critically analyzes, as Gupta observes, the representation of India from the looking glass of marginalized Indian with Portuguese and Jewish origins having very strong diasporic cultural backgrounds. So, when we look at the narrator belongs to a marginal community in India, and again has a hybrid kind of identity, because one of the parents is a Portuguese, the other one is Jewish, and so that tells the story of the modern life, how it is forming new hybrids, bringing people of different nationalities and cultures together. So, by selecting the Moor as his protagonist, obviously the novelist has designed message to the rest of the people that in a globalized world like ours, where people are migrating from one place to another, this cross fertilization of cultures is something that has to be taken as a new norm and a way forward. So, to summarize the novel is narrated by Mores or Moor Jogoivi, whose life story unfolds against the vibrant backdrops of Cochin and Bombay. And again, when we talk about Cochin and Bombay, these two are port cities and symbolize lot of movement in and outside the country. So this is again very interesting. Moore is, in fact, the last descendant of a wealthy eccentric family with Jewish and Christian roots, whose fortunes rise and fall alongside the tumultuous events of modern Indian history. So, notably, Moore suffers from a rare condition that causes him to age twice as fast as normal and has a deformed hand, making him a unique and symbolic figure within his family and the narrative. And this is also symbolic of the deteriorating Indian condition and a threat to its multicultural fabric that the novelist is talking about. As we see the rise of parties, political parties on the lines of caste, creed, and state identity. So the story traces four generations, beginning with Moore's great grandparents, and it seems to be the modus operandi of the novelist, who takes great pride in history and who believes that history is what has shaped our present, and there is no escaping from the history. So, even in the earlier novel, also, we found that the narrator started with his grandparent and then talked about his family history, mixing his memory and his present condition. So the story traces four generations, beginning with Moore's great grandparents in Cochin, whose involvement in the spice trade brings forth both prosperity and division. So they are spice traders and they are prosperous, but then prosperity, also is responsible for family feud and greed and lust for power and money. And so this is not unique to his family, because the family journey is marked by greed, betrayal, and secrets, leading to dramatic conflicts and a legacy of fractured relationships. Moore's mother, Aurora, is a celebrated artist whose rebellious spirit and art reflect both the family's and India's struggles with identity, unity, and division. And we find that this story is a rich presentation of the family history, weaving together the family feuds, love, betrayal, religion, politics, and art, set against the backdrop of a rapidly changing India. So, as the narrative moves to Bombay, the Jogoibi family becomes entangled in the city's political and cultural upheavals, including references to real historical events like the demolition of the Babri Masjid and the Bombay bombings. So the personal and the political turmoils, they are tightly interwoven, with characters' lives mirroring the broader societal changes and racial communal tensions across the country. The climax of the novel centers on family betrayals, inheritance disputes, and Moore's eventual exile. So, seeking solace and understanding, Moore travels to Spain, connecting his fate to that of Boabdil, the last Moorish king of Granada, whose own exile and loss serve as a recurring motive throughout the book. So, the title is a symbolic one, and the novelist, by selecting this title, tries to make us see uh, the life of the protagonist, which shares the same kind of exile and loss as the last Moorish king of Spain or Granada. The novel concludes with Moore reflecting on his life, coming to terms with his family's legacy, and the inescapable connections between personal identity and larger forces of history and culture. So, it turns out to be one of the most poignant stories, clubbing both personal and national. And as the fortunes of the family of Moore mirror the complexities and fractures of modern India itself, the novel's title references Boabdil, as I said, the last Moorish king of Spain, and symbolizes loss, exile, and cultural decline. And it is rich in magical realism and dark humor. The novel explores themes of identity, hybridity, religious conflict, art, love, betrayal, and the shifting landscapes of Indian politics with the rise of many radical thoughts and parties, especially around the rise of communal violence and religious fundamentalism. So, the novel talks about the tumultuous 1980s and 90s when the Indian society itself has undergone several changes because of the several incidents that take place. So, if we look at it as a diasporic novel, I again, although it does not again qualify to be called a diasporic novel in the sense we generally talk about the modern diaspora, nonetheless, we find that uh, it talks about uh, diasporic concerns very clearly, right since the word go, as we saw in the case of Midnight's Children, where the narrator himself was a curious hybrid. Here again, we find that the narrator has a hybrid identity, and they belong to a marginal section of Indian society, and they have come from outside. So, they are, by that definition, they are also diasporics. And again, finally, we find that Moor ends up in Spain, so there is border crossing as well. So the novel foregrounds, the experiences of minority communities, specifically those of Jewish and Portuguese descent in India, using the Jogoibi family as a lens to explore diaspora and its impact on identity. Mores or Moor, Jogoibi, the protagonist, embodies a hybrid identity, as I said, being of both Jewish and Catholic heritage, and this mixed lineage situates him and his family as perpetual outsiders in India because they don't have roots in India. Uh, Moore's self description as a hybrid diasporic identity is reflected in this particular excerpt. Let's see. Um, I, however, was raised neither as Catholic nor as Jew. I was both and nothing. A Jewholic, anonymous, a cashew nut, a stew pot, a mongrel cur. I was, what's the word these days? Atomized. Yes, he, a real Bombay mix. But then, the way the narrator presents himself, he feels that like the city of Bombay, which is a curious mix where there is lot of influx of people from all parts of the country and all parts of the world, he also finds his identity blending with the identity of the city itself as being a real example of a Bombay mix. He talks about his hybrid diasporic identity. Exile, displacement, and longing for homeland is another, aspect of diaspora that is reflected in this particular novel. Rushdie uses the motive of exile to convey the diasporic condition because the diasporic subject is always on the move and is exiled from its own country, marked by a sense of being home away from home and a longing for an imagined or lost homeland. So, while talking about his imaginary homelands, we talked about how Salman Rushdie conceptualizes home as imagined, not a real entity. So we find that these people are always trying to find a home away from home, and at the same time are longing to go back to their home country, where they believe their home is still there. But then this is more an imaginary home, homeland or home in the mind of the people rather than an existing concrete structure or locality. The family's migration from Kerala, their ancestral diasporic backyard, to Bombay, and eventually Moor's journey to Spain echoes the broader diasporic experience of displacement and the search for belonging. Moor's journey to Spain, in particular, becomes a metaphor for the attempt to recover lost roots and reconcile with a pluralistic past paralleling the historical fall of multicultural Spain. So, in fact, the personal history of Moore reflects the crumbling multicultural fabric of India itself, and his last attempt to um, uh, restore that. Multiculturalism is one of the prominent themes in the novel, as it portrays India as a country where several cultures and religions coexist. However, the novel also highlights the perpetual tensions and anxieties that are part of any kind of multicultural identity of a nation, uh, which is now and again threatened by communalism and politics of exclusion. So Moore's family, struggles to maintain its unique identity amidst rising communal tensions, and it reflects the precarious position of diasporic minorities in post-colonial India. So the diasporic subject is always on the margins, and with the changing circumstances of the host land, their fortunes also keep fluctuating. So again, we find that there is an overt call for recognition of all these minority communities who have contributed significantly to the economy and cultural fabric of India, and so need to be treated with respect and compassion rather than segregating them or sending them out of the country. So, and again, one thing, whenever we find Salman Rushdie talking about the city of Bombay, he turns poetic. His imagination about the city is so intense. It shows how he connects to his city of birth. So, in the Moor's last sigh, this description of the city of Bombay is a masterpiece to me. Let's look at it. Bombay was central, had been so from the moment of its creation, the bastard child of a Portuguese English wedding, and yet the most Indian of Indian cities. In Bombay, all Indias met and merged. In Bombay, too, all India met what was not India, what came across the black water to flow into our veins. Everything north of Bombay was North India. Everything south of it was the south. To the east lay India's east, and to the west, the world's west. Bombay was central. All rivers flowed into its human sea. It was an ocean of stories. We were all its narrators, and everybody talked at once. So, he talks about the multicultural uh, fabric of the city of Bombay itself. And when we look at this passage and reflect on it, we also realize how his own imagination has been shaped by this city of Bombay, where multiculturalism is celebrated and is something that is uh, integral to the existence of all the people. So, this passage captures Bombay as a diasporic hub, a city where multiple migrations and cultural intersections create a unique hybrid space. Art, memory, and diasporic consciousness also find a prominent place in this story through Aurora Jogoibi's art and Moore's storytelling. Aurora, the mother of Moore, is an artist, and Moore's storytelling itself serves as act of cultural memory, preserving and reimagining the pluralistic diasporic heritage of the family. The act of remembering and narrating the family's history itself becomes a diasporic act, resisting the amnesia of nationalist histories and keeping alive the memory of multicultural coexistence. So, again, Rusdi, through this act of storytelling, reminds us of the multicultural history of India and a need to keep it intact, our firm belief in unity in diversity. So, friends, this again is one of the most prominent diasporic narratives to me, talking about diaspora and identity, family and legacy, politics and communalism, art of storytelling itself. And Moor refers to Maurice Spain, the last Muslim king of Granada, symbolizing lost golden ages. And last sigh is the final breath of a dying world, a farewell to cosmopolitan, multicultural India. So it is a kind of lament on the part of Moore, who misses that India which once used to be truly multicultural and now is fractured by sentiments that are parochial. And that's why, this turns out to be one of the tragic beauties of hybrid lives when we look at this novel from um, the diasporic uh, perspective. And so overall, this is again um, a masterpiece of diasporic sensibility, and certainly helps us again look at our own history, traditions, multicultural fabric, and the underlying tension that characterize the life of a diasporic subject. So, friends, I call for your attention to this particular novel, because what we find is it talks about the minority diasporic subjects in India itself, rather than talking about the Indians going abroad and experiencing all sorts of problems. So, diasporic subject, whether we talk about India or we talk about America or Britain, there are certain experiences that are typical of diasporic people, and they relate to all of them rather than just being typical products of a particular country, country X or country Y. So, we find that the diasporic subjects uh, throughout the world face the same kind of challenges, the fluctuating fortunes, the hybridity of identity, the mixing of cultures, and obviously there is always an overt call for building an inclusive society, uh, which might be a curious mixture of different cultures and different identities, in fact helping us leading life which is much more fulfilling. And that's why Salman Rushdie also tries to give this message to all the readers and all the people, that in the 20th century and 21st century there cannot be any society that might go against the multicultural pluralistic fabric and can still continue its existence. So he again criticizes this monolithic notion of a culture and believes that a culture is in fact enriched by the interactions between different cultures, especially when we talk about the culture of India, its richness, the variety and diversity that it commands. This has been contributed to by all the people, irrespective of their origin, how they landed on this land, and so on and so forth. So, the Moor's family saga, in fact, mirrors the changing India, and which is perceived as a loss by Salman Rushdie, who believes that India has traditionally been a welcoming country, a multicultural, pluralistic society where all the people, uh, even the Jews, Portuguese, and other people who came to this nation, they also, became part of our extended culture. So this novel is a very important work for the philosophy of Salman Rushdie, and I'd like you to go through this in more detail. Again, ask you to go through the novel yourself in order to understand its style, its use of language, its narrative more in depthly. So these are the references, friends, and thank you very much. We'll again talk about another diasporic text and another diasporic writer in the next class. So thank you very much for your company. Thank you.